What would you like to do if money were no object? How would you really enjoy spending your life?
Welcome to the DSGEAR podcast.
If you say that getting the money is the most important thing, you will spend your life completely wasting your time. You'll be doing things you don't like doing in order to go on living, that is, to go on doing things you don't like doing.
Welcome here with Josh McKinney of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu podcast and obviously a black belt. I ran into you mostly because I was when I came back to my jiu-jitsu journey after a long break, I was searching around for all the shows that Henry Akins had done. And so I ran into your episode. Uh, I was impressed that anybody of your age was actually checking out Henry and getting clued in on all that and all the Hickson stuff. That was pretty cool. So yeah. And so now Datsusara is sponsoring your podcast as well because I enjoy it and I just thought it was a good fit. And been enjoying your show and just looking forward to talking to you more, figuring out how you got on this whole journey.
Yeah, man, me too. I'm not sure how I got on the whole journey either, so I'm looking forward to figuring it out too.
Well, it's good. You come at life with a humble attitude. Even just the title of the show, "I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu," that's really just it's just the start of a wisdom quest, right? It's like, okay, I know nothing. So I think that's pretty cool. So when did you start in jiu-jitsu?
I started in 2008. I my
Think I should be stable here. I've got pretty good internet. Okay. Uh, so how did you start your jiu-jitsu journey? You get to reformulate this a few times now. So
Yes, I get a few takes. So, I started in 2008. I was 14 years old, and my mom was making me try all kinds of different sports and stuff, and I was overweight, and she just was trying to get me to do something. I really just liked playing video games and watching pro wrestling, and eventually there was an MMA school that was opening close to my house, and she just convinced me that, like, oh, just try this once. And it was kind of one of those, okay, I'll do it. It'll make mom happy. I'll try jujitsu.
yeah.
And that is where I met my still to this day coach, Kyle Watson, and tried my first class and just absolutely loved it. It was one of those, like, did my first class and I came up to my dad after, who had taken me, and I was like, I want to do this every night forever. And he said, me too. And so he came and did the next class with me, and we fast forward to today, 17 years later, we're both black belts.
Yeah. Oh, so he started at the same time as you.
Yeah, so he had trained for a few months at a different school, like a couple of years before me. And
Yeah.
then there was this point where it was just so far away. It was just such a hard thing to commit to doing.
Yeah.
And so he kind of figured that he would be too old to do it the second time.
Yeah.
And there were a few guys on the mat that were old, and he was like, "Oh, I'm gonna try this with you." And we've been training together ever since.
Nice. That is so cool. That's such an interesting thing. Makes me feel better about forcing my kid to go to jiu-jitsu too. So she's she'll like, I don't know. Like a lot of kids. She's like, I have to drag her too. She's like, oh, always trying to get out of it. And then when she comes home, like she wants to talk about it and she's had some fun. And if I'm working on a new move or something, she'll, oh, okay, like show me that, and wants to show me how she can choke people out really well, which actually works extremely well with her little bony arms. So, and yeah, so it's kind of interesting, but that, yeah, makes me feel better about that a little bit. It's tricky because you want to keep it fun, but you don't want to let, kids give up too easily whenever something's a little challenging or they don't like it right away or something. So, but that is cool that you were drawn to it immediately. Huh.
Yeah, it was like perfect thing at the perfect time for me, I think.
Yeah. Yeah. Did you and like moving along in life, I mean, do you do pretty much your jiu-jitsu is like your career as well? Like so okay, so that's amazing because you also have obviously at least one Asian parent, and they
Yes.
were they stressing that you weren't like, off at college and pursuing some more white collar kind of career?
As much as we would love to just act like that is just a stereotype, my mom was very much like the one who pushed me to do jujitsu, but within 6 months, I was pretty much confident, like, yeah, I want to be a full-time jiu-jitsu coach. This is what the coolest guys that I know just teach jiu-jitsu for a living. And she was like, no, you should be a doctor. You should go to school to be a lawyer. You should, something along those lines.
Yeah.
And not that I wasn't good at school, I just didn't enjoy it. And when
Yeah.
you have that contrast of something that you just absolutely love versus something that you can do but you have to force yourself to do, it
Hmm.
was very much for me like I don't really want to do this. And then my dad also, um because of it was just a unique time for us because we were, I was 14, he was 48, 49, and most of our friends were 25, 25 to 30. And so
Yeah.
we had this like we had these groups that we would talk to, and most of the advice that they would give was, hey, I have these student loans and I'm not even doing what I went to school for. So unless you know what you want to do, you shouldn't just go take out a loan to go to college. And that was what the thought process was like my dad always said, like, man, the money that we've saved for your college, I would love to invest into your jujitsu. And it was a very unique perspective from my dad, but I think it had so much to do with the people that we got to interact with, and getting to see that their perspective on things really made it a simpler choice for me.
Yeah. That's really great that you were exposed to that, and then that, dad was open to it, and mom must have saw some wisdom in it as well. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's pretty cool because I know it's tough. My wife being Korean and coming from that background, she was very much like, no, 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 no. You do well in school just because you should, and you go to college and you just pursue that corporate career or whatever you need to do. And so I'm more of the I saw a lot of that. I saw a lot of people growing up, and I went, they aren't even doing what they were studying in college if they have a job at all. And that's more so these days, I think, even than back a while ago. But you see that a lot now. And on top of that, just seeing people kind of miserable in their current paths, where it was just like, wow, they're not really living. They're just kind of, I mean, that was the whole reason I picked Datsusara originally for the company name, because it just means escape the salary worker's life, which is sort of to me, it's a Japanese phrase, really. And the most obsessed culture as far as like going and working hard, and literally sometimes working yourself to death. They have a whole term for that too over there, is in Japan. And so I thought that was a good example of like, okay, people who are leaving that, even this very, very expected cultural societal pressure, and then going to find something they love. Of course, that's led to some troubles in explaining to people that I wasn't just saying you should just quit your job and slack off. I mean, there's maybe a little of that, but but you got to go find something that you care about, that you hopefully are also good at, because when you care about something, you tend to get better at it. So yeah, but that is really cool that you found that, and such early on you kind of found that path, and stuck with it too, because I imagine you must have had some challenges along the way. Like, how did you go from, I mean, you knew you wanted to be a coach early on, but how did you go from training at whatever gym you were at, and then when did you decide to branch off and do your own thing and all that?
I think I did have a pretty natural like gift for jujitsu. And it wasn't, immediately, but probably 6, 8 months in, I started to recognize like, man, I seem to be able to learn this faster and do better with this than anyone else that's in my classes. I started to compete about 3 months in and just kept getting better at it. And so I think that there was this level of like, oh, I'm good at this. But on top of it, it was more it was more just like I was surrounded by people that had made martial arts their lives, and like my coach especially. And so even 6, 8 months in, when I told him like eventually I want to be a jiu-jitsu coach one day, he was very supportive of that, and he was very much like, well, I'm gonna try to set you up to be a jiu-jitsu coach. I'm gonna let you get experience teaching. I'm gonna be there for you in any capacity that I can. And so, even to a point that I think when I was 19, I got offered kind of a full-time role as a coach at a different gym, and went to my coach and he told me to not take it, which was super surprising. He was like, honestly, he's like, this gym has had multiple coaches before. They always seem to fall through.
Mm,
I don't think that it's going to be a good fit for you. He's like, your name is going to then be tied to this. And he's like, I think that you should do it on your own when you do it. And looking back, that was like, it was hard to agree and be like, okay, you're right. I want to, I'm going to do it on my own. Cause I was like, someone's willing to pay me to do jujitsu.
yeah.
But looking back, that gym closed down a couple of years later.
Mm,
And actually, when they closed down, I was able to buy their mats and their subfloor that they had just put in because
uh,
I was in a really good spot with the gym that I was at. And so at like, I want to say at 20, maybe 21. Yeah, 21, I started. We found this space. It was one of my dad's friends had a empty apartment that was connected to his business. And my dad was like, you should go check it out. The rent would be almost nothing. You should just go and look and see. And me and my mom went and looked and we're like, oh man, we could knock these walls out. We could start a jujitsu school here. And we did. And ever since that has been my, it's probably 3 years, 4 years before it became my only source of income.
mm,
But
yeah.
since then, it has always been my only source of income. Now we have three schools and I think 15 black belts under me. And so, it really has been an awesome journey.
That's pretty good. Wow, that's really good in a pretty short amount of time there too. Yeah, that's like took me about 4 years from opening the first bag I sold till I could actually support myself on the company here. But yeah, I haven't franchised out practically yet. So that's pretty cool. You got four schools. Are they all sort of in the same zone or within a reasonable area
So three schools. Where
or three?
one is my main one is actually the studio that I'm sitting in right now is our main one, and that's we've moved to a bigger location since being in that apartment.
Yeah.
Then after, no, actually it was before we moved here. We started another school in Jerseyville, Illinois, it's about 45 minutes away from me. And then just a few months ago, we started our third school in Edwardsville, Illinois. It's about 20 to 25 minutes away from me. And so they're all in Southern Illinois. They're all relatively close, which is nice because it's kind of like we have this ability to, oh, if you have a membership at one, you can kind of train at any of them when you need to.
Yeah.
But then there's also we're not so close that they were kind of competing with each other.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. And do you find like are they sort of managing themselves to some extent so that are you focused mostly on the home gym or
So, I mean, it's weird. It's just like with anything, you learn a new move in jujitsu and then you just start trying it and you
yeah.
suck at it. And then eventually, ideally, you do it long enough and it becomes your move. But with us, it's like the biggest thing that I've learned so far with the three schools is anything good that you're doing in the school and that I'm doing in my main school with advertising, marketing, with how we run the schools with curriculum, anything good is multiplied by three because it's all three schools. But then on the other side, anything bad is multiplied by three.
Yeah.
And so I've really gotten to like opening that third school has let me see the holes in our system
Mm.
so much clearer than even when we had two.
Uh,
Because when you have two, you're not sure is it my fault that this isn't working in my school, but it is working in our Jerseyville school?
mm,
I'm not really sure. But when you add that third kind of third perspective, it really allows you to go like, oh, this is an actual hole. But if you fix it again, it's multiplied by three. You really do. It matters so much more to fix these problems. And so for me, it's just helped me kind of um, have better focus on what I should be working on in my business or on my businesses instead of just in my business
yeah.
in general.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really great. That's an interesting thing. I hadn't thought about that as far as how that would give you, yeah, that third perspective where you can finally go, okay, like what's really happening here. Yeah,
Hmm.
that's very interesting. So how did you so I've got it. So if you were do you feel like your jujitsu knowledge, because obviously I think in some ways translates to what everything else you're doing, because to be able to be that successful at jujitsu and at getting these businesses going as quickly as you have and at such a young age, um, I mean, did you feel like you had a way of learning or some sort of way that you either grew up with or just had innate that helped you progress so quickly? Like with jujitsu, did you just pick it up really naturally? Or I know there's a lot of us who, at least for my first, I'm doing much better now, but I know for at least my first 10 years or so of training, it was always so hard. It was so hard to understand. Well, I could grind it out, but it was like, didn't make a lot of progress.
I think that I am somebody who learns the most by doing. And so and jujitsu is a really good art for that.
Mhm.
And on top of that, I feel like I've been blessed with some really good mentors around me. And then I'm also very good about recognizing that and trusting those mentors. And I know at a young age that was something that really did seem to separate me from a lot of the other people I was competing against is this mindset that like, oh, now I know, now I'm aware. And even like you see this in jujitsu a lot that young athletes, they start to get good and they get to where they can beat these other guys around them. And so they assume that that other person doesn't have anything to help them with, to share with them. And I think that I think I just learned that habit from my dad, but my dad was always such a good learner, and so is my jujitsu coach. Both of those guys were just so good at finding mentors, trusting them, and using it to better themselves. And I think that that habit is something that I have repetitively done in just all kinds of different mentors that I found and just being able to go like, oh, maybe this guy knows more than me, or maybe he knows more than me in this one specific area. And then once I get those concepts and those ideas from them, then I'm really good about trying it and just going like, oh, I'm gonna see if this works and kind of learning on my own from there. And so I think that that is like trying to boil it down. I feel like that is always been the biggest things for the success that I've had is having good mentors and then being able to just learn from them and try it and then go back to them and try it again and try it again.
Yeah. That's good to see, especially that you caught on to that at such an early age. I think, in our youth, a lot of us have a tendency, and I see this now in my daughter. I know I did it too, but now I really notice it. But the tendency to kind of feel like, oh, I know it all, or you guys, there. What is the wisdom here? Obviously, you guys are not figuring things out, and my generation knows better, or I know better, and just not really listening. I mean, I know when I was a kid, I was always a bit on a quest for wisdom, but I dismissed a lot of things that I probably shouldn't have as well, just because I saw some failures in some certain ways, and then I just threw out the whole thing. Like
Hmm.
for instance, even with even my views on, let's say, the whole of Western philosophy and religion, like I kind of just saw a couple holes in that, and I tossed it out for so many years, which was really quite foolish, and took a long time to come back to that. I actually wonder, do you think? I mean, your father, was he a pastor when you were young?
So he started pastoring maybe when I was 8 or 9, and so he's been a pastor for most of my life.
Yeah. I wonder if some of that influence and his way of looking at things might have helped direct you that way. And also perhaps at least in finding that looking for a calling, and it didn't matter if it was going to become a doctor or whatever it was, but to find that whatever calling was where you were meant to be kind of thing. Yeah.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, my dad was also on top of being a pastor. He kind of became a pastor out of duty. We were part of a church, and it was a relatively big church, and then there were just a ton of bad things that happened with the pastor of that church,
Yeah.
and so there was this point where there were a bunch of us that were unchurched, and
Yeah.
he was the best fit to be that pastor. But when it comes to like providing for us, he provided for us as a personal trainer, and his for 25 years he ran a personal out of a like private personal training studio out of our garage. And that was what he did to send my brother and I to private school. That is what he did to pay our mortgage. That's what he always did. And that was because he loved it. That was why he just had this interest in weight training and in health. And he was always learning. It was constant. There was always a new diet to experiment with. There was always a new methodology to experiment with, a new mentor that he was going to get to talk on the phone to for 30 minutes and learn as much as he could from. And so to me, that's, I think, where the biggest habits that I got were from him about learning. He just has always been that way. And even my mom, she has a quite a big nonprofit that she runs now, and seeing how like I don't feel like she had natural leadership abilities, but how she has gone over the top to learn how to be a good leader. And now like in our gym and stuff, my dad and I and my wife, who all run our gym, are asking her questions about leadership and managing people and things like that because of, again, it's like she just was willing to learn. And so I just was surrounded by people that were always trying to better themselves. And I just, I always kind of assumed, like, I never thought it was weird to try to like to be a full-time jiu-jitsu coach. I just thought that that was what life was you find something that you love and then you make that your career. And so it was just surprising to me when people were like, oh, you shouldn't do this. This isn't safe. And I'm like, dude, my dad did this. And it was good for us.
Right. Yeah. That's a beautiful thing. It's great that you grew up that way, and you're a good testament to that, being open to knowledge and having, an upbringing that keeps keeps that as an open path. It's just, and encourages that. I mean, I think that's huge. Sadly, unfortunately, I think a lot of people don't grow up with that. So I know
Mhm.
even myself, I had to, my mother kind of did, but she was very busy and so she led by example a bit, but I had to go and kind of figure a lot of that stuff out on my own, but that's okay. I had a lot of, since I didn't pursue a normal college path, I had a lot of time to sit around and probably took too many drugs and other things pursuing and learn. I went the hard route in some ways, but came around, and now I'm like, I was curious too. I'm curious if your school that you ended up at, did they also encourage that kind of way of learning? I know, like, I'm in the middle of trying to get my daughter into a different school now. We were trying to, when we moved out to Texas, I thought, well, we'll give public school a try. Maybe it's better out here, but it's sad. I still don't see most public schools as really helping kids to learn and to love learning and to have wonder and have a pursuit of wisdom and virtue. They just don't really do that. In fact, I think I would say they're actively hampering that. I've noticed my daughter, since going to the school here, it's like she's actually lost a lot of wonder, and I mean, just, I don't know. Yeah, it's kind of sad. So I'm curious if your school environment was like.
So, kindergarten through 12th grade, I went to a school that the curriculum is called ACE. It's Accelerated Christian Education. It is and honestly, like the things that I learned, I think were probably fine. But the one thing that I feel like really does separate that style of schooling I really think it was probably designed to be homeschool.
Mhm,
But we went to a school that used this curriculum.
mhm,
And basically, how it would work is every textbook that you had, math, English, social studies, science, all those things were cut into 1/12. And you would go through each one of those. And so that like textbook was your whole grade of math. You would have 30 pages per one of those twelfths that you would have to work in. And they were very much like once you learned how to add, subtract, and read, you were
mhm.
teaching yourself. You were teaching yourself through what the books had. And then it was just a ton of repetition of whatever they were trying to teach you. And so, what was really interesting about it is at the end of one of those 12th, a 12th was called a pace. At the end of one of those paces, you would take a test to see, a 2-page, 3-page test to see if you actually retained that knowledge.
Mm,
What was really interesting about it is that you were responsible for doing 24 pages of work every single day. And you would start each day by setting a goal of how many in each. So I could just go like, man, today I'm only going to do math and I'm going to do 24 pages of math. And then tomorrow I'll do 24 pages of English and that way. Or you could do whatever, a couple pages in each. You were allowed to kind of self-regulate. And the idea was that that they were going to create people that would wake up every day and say, oh, I have these goals that I need to set and then accomplish each day. And I do notice that that habit is ingrained in me. That is like so, I don't even know. I'm sure that the curriculum has changed a bunch even since I've went to school and what is being taught. But the methodology in how it was being taught and how you were responsible to do your own thing, I really do think that that was such a helpful thing for me. My son is 18 months old, so that's something we talk a lot about is, hey, what kind of schooling are we going to do? And if we did homeschooling, I'm pretty confident that that would be the curriculum that we use just because I loved how it really was like even in second and third grade, I was responsible for whether or not I was going to get my work done and what that work was. And I feel like that did teach me a certain level of responsibility that a lot of other kids that just would show up to class, didn't have to pay attention. And then, like it's just how schooling is for most kids. I just feel like that there was something different there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That sounds like a really good thing to develop early on. I know that when my daughter was really young, we did kind of a classical education homeschool, which worked for a little while. The younger ages, that wasn't hard for me to get her through. As we started to get a little bit older, it was almost hard in my compliance because I felt like I'm the guy that tested out of high school. I barely did a little bit of, college just to get out of the house. And so I was having a hard time getting myself to sit down and go, okay, here's your math lesson today. Let me explain to you how an integer works and all these, and it was like,
Hmm.
okay, because I do this stuff, but I don't really even think about it anymore. So that was tough. And if we would have gotten to a point though where she could have taken over the responsibility of learning for herself, I think that would have really helped because that was also not working when I said, "Here's a basic lesson, you go do it." I never got her good at developing that. So now
Hmm.
that's one thing though that with this new school, I think they're very good at getting kids to start caring and taking responsibility, like you said. I mean, the responsibility thing's just so huge throughout life in general, and I see it easily with my kid where just certain things, oh, why should I do this for the dog, or pick up poop in the yard or whatever. I'm like, hey, there's certain responsibilities you want to just get used to having, even if you don't think you did something directly. If you're part of a team or an organization or family, whatever, that you should just take that on. And so yeah, it's an interesting thing, the whole educational route, but it definitely makes a difference. And I think it's interesting that probably, yeah, definitely, I'm sure helped you along your way in the way you do learn things. And at least if nothing else, yeah, taking responsibility for it. That's something too. I think in jujitsu, a lot of people don't take enough ownership and responsibility. There's very always pushing it off to some reason or excuse or something else. And, being able to sit down and really consider what you're trying to learn and think about it clearly and logically and then go and apply that. That's a big skill to have.
Hmm.
Um, did you also, I mean, you said you're a very like articulate, well-spoken guy, especially for your age. And I'll admit, I still struggle. I suck at speaking compared to, I'm 48 and I still feel like I've got all these great, thoughts I want to get out and I struggle like hell. So, and I'm curious if that, and I know I see my daughter with the same problem. She doesn't like to stand up and speak up and take initiative, even though she's a very thoughtful person. But I'm curious, did you do any practicing of like public speaking or anything like that?
So yes, definitely. The school that I went to was, I mean, they were very, very, very religious. You were pretty much going to be a pastor if you were lucky. And so something that they would do with the kids as kind of prep is I think, at least for the boys, at like seventh grade, they would do every morning would start with it wasn't really a Bible study or anything like that. We'd do the Pledge of Allegiances, we'd do a few other things. But it was just, it had to kind of be led, and like sing a few songs, stuff like that. And at seventh grade, you would be on a rotating thing of, like, hey, it's your turn to lead the opening for everybody. And so that was one of the first things. I also, in church, my mom led our children's ministry, and so that meant that if there was a skit, I was in it, and there was always like that was just always something that that I would do, that I would kind of be pushed to do. And I think that even in jujitsu, I started teaching jujitsu quite young also, and trying to take these skills that I had developed and these moves that I had learned by feel for years, and then try to articulate them into something I think was also really, really helpful too. But I think more than anything, it was just I was used to going up in front of people and speaking.
Yeah, that's a fantastic skill to have. I'm another one I'm hoping my daughter hopefully gets from this new school, because we went in and toured it, and I was amazed at the really young kids that were so good at just like, oh, let me rattle off what I just learned that we were just going over in class, or here's my whole speech that I wrote about so and so. And then the other kids were like immediately feeding back and going, well, I thought you had a good use of this and that. And like they had good dialogue going on, and actually clearly learning and caring about learning. And then yeah, and then being able to articulate well like that was just, that's fantastic. That's nothing, I didn't get any of that in my school upbringing at all. And yeah, so I think that's such a great thing to have, very important. Well, yeah, it's something I've certainly been working on too as well. I'm taking like I'm noticing that taken a lot of courses at the Peterson Academy. I don't know if you've heard of that. So
Uh-huh.
Peterson started. There's actually a lot of interesting courses in there. So I feel like I'm getting the college that I always wanted but couldn't find. So,
Uh-huh.
and on the cheap, really. But yeah, but it's interesting. I'm noticing just the amount of like also just being able to write and take proper notes and do that work. Like it's helping me form like really compress and compose that information in a way that I don't know. I did not get those skills younger. So
Hmm.
nice to be that they're still available to have. But it's yeah, it's interesting to see that your path and the way you're on that helped out a lot.
And even doing solo episodes on my podcast was I think for me, one of the most helpful things, because I'm doing these, at first I think they were probably 15 minutes long. Now I do solo episodes for an hour and a half long, and apparently can still keep people's attention in it. And I just think that that is like, being able to speak my mind is something, it's a skill, it's not something that you can just do or not. And having that confidence in like, hey, what I'm saying isn't stupid, right? And then like feeling comfortable, like, even if it is, who cares? And just being able to do it. I think that is, I think that has come way more doing the podcast every week than anything else.
Yeah. Well, you're good at organizing it too, because I could do probably a 10-hour podcast if I just rambled on as I usually do to my wife or something, and then I really don't care too much about sounding stupid, but I need to work on, yeah, like parsing off the information into bite-sized chunks, and just making it something that people can follow along and enjoy without just being stream of consciousness, because that's no fun. Nobody needs to be in my head. So but you've done a good job with that. I like those episodes actually quite a bit. So those have been fun to listen to. You've got a good sense of humor too, so I think it always keeps things interesting. So switching back to jiu-jitsu a little bit, how did you run into like to Henry Akins and that whole I mean I guess I just listened a little bit to, is it Chris Brown? I
Chris
think
Burns.
or Chris
Uh-huh.
Burns, excuse me, is also a Hickson devotee and black belt. Yeah, how did you run into that sort of side of jujitsu?
Um, originally, like, the Hickson side was definitely through Henry. My dad had been a fan of Henry's stuff forever. Had just always enjoyed the way that Henry teaches,
Yeah.
and there was like, not that I didn't enjoy it, I just didn't, it was just not somebody that I watched a lot.
Sure.
And about 2.5 years ago, I did we were going to be in Florida during a time that there was going to be a Henry 2-day seminar. And I was like, yeah, I would love, my dad wanted to go. I'm like, yeah, I would love to. That sounds fun. And so it's where we always vacation in Florida. And so it was like, yeah, I would love to do some jujitsu here and just see, how this guy teaches. And Henry taught some side control pressure stuff in the first, like on the first day. And within about 15 minutes, I was like, man, I'm quite sure that what he's saying is true, but I didn't understand it that way. And so that's really interesting to me that I can kind of feel and see like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that he's right about what he just said, but I just didn't know that. And for me, it had been years since I'd had a coach that had um, done that to me, that had kind of blown my mind in certain things. And so pretty much immediately I was all in. I was like, um, this is super interesting to me. I really like this. And then into like the first day of the seminar ended, we went back with our family. I guess everybody else went out to eat, and somebody had been familiar with me as a competitor, and so had mentioned like, yeah, this is one of the highest level competitors we've ever seen at a Henry seminar. And Henry was, I think, like, oh, that's interesting. Like I didn't realize that. And so the next day I was like Uki for the whole thing. And so I was just getting beat down and I was loving it. I was like, this is so cool.
Yeah.
This stuff is so interesting to me. And I mean, it was enough for me that I was pretty much like, I want to just drop all this other stuff that I'm doing and just focus on this part of jujitsu for a while. And then a few months later, I was at Master Worlds, and Henry lives in Vegas.
Mhm.
And I did a private with him, and he took 2.5 hours probably and did this private with me and a couple of my students. And at the time, I was traveling the country teaching guard passing, and Henry showed me his guard passing stuff. And I was like, this is this is unbelievable to me. I don't know. I don't know if what you're saying is true, but it feels very true. And then I really have spent the last couple of years just focused on that. And so, like as you know, I went and did another. We did another Henry camp this just last weekend,
Yeah.
and man, every time I get to learn from him, it's always so helpful for me. And yeah, that's been my kind of following Henry around and being part of the Henry fan club. With like Chris Burns, he was just somebody I've been seeing a lot on YouTube.
Mhm.
And one of my favorite things about having a podcast is you get to have conversations with people that you would never really get to have conversations with in any other space.
Right.
And so I just reached out to him, and he was happy to be on the show and
Yeah.
got to talk to him. He still trains pretty regularly with Hickson. And
Mm.
so, yeah, it's been a fun kind of part of the journey for me. It's like that, it's the idea of the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show is like, oh, you don't know everything. You have so much more to learn. And I even 16, 17 years in have found that to still be true.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it definitely is. I mean, that seems to just keep going on and on. Definitely, though, I think yeah, running into Henry and some of these Hickson, folks will open you up to that real fast too. The first time, I think, Henry just tapped me just to side control pressure. I mean, I just went, "Are you kidding me?" And I mean, he's a little bigger than me, but not a lot. It was just to feel that and go, how did that just happen? Is this possible? And then to
Hmm.
be able to eventually apply that, I think it took me, I don't know, well, it took me many, many years, but eventually finally do that to someone else was really, really interesting. So,
Hmm.
and a lot of fun, but it's really it's great to find people like that have a perspective and just so much knowledge that you find out, oh, this is so much deeper, and it just keeps going. And yet it's simple. I could say, simple, not easy.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's really incredible. It's nice that you ran into that to him early on. I think he's a little more accessible now. Like back in the day, like, well, back like when you started and stuff. he was hard to find. Like
Hmm.
I don't even remember exactly how I found him, but not many people knew about him. I mean, he had his school, but that wasn't like people weren't super aware of it. And yeah, now at least he's got everything. You can find it on the internet, and then he's doing so many seminars and everything, which is really cool. So it's good to see him out there in particular doing that. So
And
yeah,
the problem is too, is like if you don't feel it,
mm,
it's hard to recognize
it is.
what is happening.
Yeah,
And that is like not that he's not very articulate. It's just it's something because we're all seeing the same things over and over again. And so if somebody is doing them and they're that much different, you almost have to experience it.
yeah,
And so that was like, the first time that I left after learning guard passing from him was like, hey, what should I be looking at to show me that I'm starting to grasp some of this weight distribution stuff? And he
mm,
said, you should be tapping black belts with pressure easily, basically every round. And I was like, oh, okay. Sounds good. I'll start working on that, coach.
all right.
And yeah, and it's like, because he's like, until you're doing that, you really aren't, you still don't understand it.
Yeah.
And it was really, really, I mean, it's just been such a fun journey to kind of to get that perspective that is so different than what anybody else is working
Yeah.
and get to try to use it and see if it works.
Yeah. He, it's funny. Some of the stuff that, like, if I didn't know him and hadn't mostly experienced his things in person first, I would probably watch a lot of his things and go, this guy's full of crap. There's no way. This is like he's borderlining into like weird old kung fu or something like
Hmm.
joke. But yeah, you go and experience that, and then if you're not sold, I think you're foolish. So but then it's just a matter of learning it and implementing it, which often is tough. It's always the humble moments of going back to Henry and going, hey, this thing you showed me, it's not quite working. So, well, because you suck at it and you need to work at this and keep going. But it's, when you feel it and you get some progress, like you said, with that, and even if it's a difficult bar, it's amazing to see how well things work and that there's just a whole nother way of looking at things. And yeah, and speaking of that, do you have a particular way that you like to train to kind of increase your knowledge more quickly? Do you do a lot of positional sparring, that kind of thing?
Yeah, that so I've tried every type of training, I think. Throughout the years, the one thing that has even because even before I had my own school, there was a period where my coach had moved and it was a little bit harder to get to train directly with him. And so for me, my dad, and then a smaller group of us, we were very like in charge of our own training. And the one thing that has just always been a constant, even through opening the schools, is positional sparring. That has always been like the fastest way it seems like to progress for us. I do a few other things. I really like the method designated winner. That's something where you will basically do a positional spar with a defined amount of resistance. So like, hey, we're gonna positional spar, De La Hiva guard. I'm passing. I'm the designated winner, and you are going to frame me and try to keep my ankle, but you're not going to sweep me, you're not going to submit me, and you're just going to let me get reps. And then we can kind of increase. Ideally, you slowly increase until you are just positional sparring in that position.
Hmm.
And those type of things are like my main two ways of training. And then I think I'm still young enough and healthy enough that I can still do quite a few live rounds. And so, those are the three ways that I train. And I would say more than anything, it is positional spars.
Yeah.
That has been my thing forever. It's like
Yeah.
the Wednesday night class that I teach at my school, we do it's like 30 minutes of instruction, 30 minutes of positional sparring, and it's all different positions. We've done that forever, and it's still for me my favorite night to train just because you get bad positions in, you get whatever position we're working in, and you just get a lot of looks where you can focus on stuff. I always hate that, like, like live rounds are a lot of fun, but when you look back on them, it's like, okay, well, what happened again when I was in De La Riva Guard, which is what I was supposed to be focusing on. Like I really wasn't even in De La Riva Guard that much.
Yeah.
And when you force people in it and you say we're going to positional spar on the drive home, you get to drive and go, oh, that they kept holding onto my pant leg. I need a way to deal with that. They kept
Mhm.
winning the underhook. I need a way to deal with that. And
Yeah.
so I just think it's so much easier to get better through positional sparring than anything else.
Yeah, I would absolutely agree. In fact, when I after my so my long jujitsu journey, basically I started in like 2006. Didn't really start doing the jujitsu more until 2007. I was kind of doing MMA and I thought I'd be Chuck Liddell. I was like, oh, I just want to learn enough to get off the ground, then keep punching them. Then I got punched in the head enough and I went, ah, you know what? I think I prefer jujitsu. So
Uh-huh.
so from that point on, but I trained for like God, at least like 8, 9 years and was still just barely, a blue belt also because I was stubborn and switching schools and started to get into 10th planet stuff and other schools wouldn't promote me specifically because of that because there was a lot of closed-mindedness to that back in the day, especially. Anyhow, but I took about an 8 year break and when I came back, it was partially because I found a good gym of people I knew here as an SBG gym that was under John Frankel and one of his black belts and so I was familiar with it because I knew the SPG guys where I started, and also one of the first people they were having there was Henry, and so I got re-inspired after seeing Henry again. I went, man, I miss not being good at this, and I was kind of worried about getting injured, but this gym was set up really well where they don't even let people come in and live roll like the first day. It takes a long time before they even let them do that. So I wasn't worried about getting hurt by some fresh off the street new white belt or something. But anyway, so I got inspired by being around Henry and I asked him and I said, I don't want to keep sucking at this. I don't want to take another 10 years to get my purple belt. Like what do you recommend? And the first thing is it's just a positional sparring. And I went, oh, what's that? Never even tried that. And which is crazy because all these years and even when I was at an SBG gym originally and they're all about aliveness, but they didn't really have that integrated so much at the one I was at back then. And but it was great because the very next day, one of our coaches here, she said, "Hey, we're going to start a new class on Sunday. It's going to be positional sparring for blue belts and up." And I went, "Oh, fantastic!"
That's awesome.
So yeah, and now that like same thing, it's my favorite class. Like Sundays when we do that, we spend an hour just on different positions, and we alternate it up, and it's just been I'm amazed at how much faster I've been learning than before. I really feel like I've learned more in the last 6 months of doing that than I did in like my first 9 or 10 years. So it's been really nice. And there's always new plateaus, but it's been good. So yeah, that's good to hear you say that as well. So I feel like I'm on the right sort of general path. But
Hmm.
yeah, I'm trying to get that purple belt at least, and I want to earn it too. It's something sucks about being, especially in my position. I have a company that has like, we're selling fight gear and whatever, and it's like, oh geez, and I come back and what's it been like 15 years now or something since I started the company, and people are like, "What is this guy still a blue belt?" So, luckily, we have one black belt on the team too. But yeah, I want to not suck at jujitsu forever. So yeah, just like your podcast
Hmm.
titled. So, what made you start the podcast? I mean, I can imagine, but
Man, I was looking for I kind of the original idea was I was going to do a YouTube channel where I was teaching moves, and the original thought was going to be the "You Suck at Jiu-Jitsu" show, and it was going to show specific moves on what like okay, this is what people do wrong on the guillotine. This is why you still suck at the guillotine,
uh-huh.
and I liked that idea. I was playing with it for a little bit. And then one of my students one day came in, and this is literally how the conversation was going. He's like, "Man, do you ever listen to Jocko's podcast?" And I was like, "No, I don't. I've never listened to that." And he
Mhm.
goes, "I've really been listening to a lot of podcasts." And he looked at me and he goes, "You should start a podcast." And I was like, "Why?" And he goes, he's like, "You know a lot of jujitsu stuff, and you know a lot of cool people. You probably do good having a podcast." And so literally the next day I did my first episode. It was just me talking into my phone. For the longest time, it was one of my most listened to episodes too. And it was titled "The Simplest Way to Progress at Jiu-Jitsu." And it was this thing that I had done for my students for a long time called the end goal method, where you focus on an end goal position. So if you're trying to get good, focus on the Kimura for the next 6 weeks to 6 months. Only go for the Kimura. That's your only focus. If you have something else, don't go for it. Go for Kimuras. Use it to sweep, use it to pass, use it to take the back. And the idea is you start to create these avenues where you see Kimuras everywhere
Hmm.
and it helps you get good in general. And I did that episode and I got a ton of really good feedback. Then I did an interview with my dad. I got a ton of really good feedback and I was like, okay, I could possibly do this. And I was kind of pretty random with it still until COVID hit. And then with COVID, like one, you just got so much access to guests because everybody was stuck at home.
Yeah.
And so it was like, man, I get to talk to Kenny Florian today, and I would have never gotten to talk to this guy before. And that was when I just kept running with it and kept running with it. And like, I think I'm gonna do this. And I'm still at this point where I'm like, I guess I'm doing this. I guess this is what I like to be doing, and it's just a lot of fun for me, and just something that I find myself being able to continue to get incrementally better at, and get there's been so many cool connections that I've made because of it that I'm like, yeah, I'm glad that I started this, but the big thing is just was like the starting of it was really not very deeply thoughtful. It was pretty random. And I was like, I guess I'm doing this. And it just slowly kept growing and kept becoming a thing.
Yeah, that's great. It's good that you did, and you're very prolific with it. I mean, you've been cranking out content, which is awesome. Along with my break from jujitsu, I took a long break from the podcast as well, so kind of getting back in the mode of it. But like you said, it's a lot of fun. I mean, it's just a lot of fun to talk to people and then be able to share the knowledge that they have with other people. And as you said too, it's nice to be able to get to talk to people that maybe you wouldn't normally be able to talk to.
Hmm.
I mean, I know especially back in the day when podcasts were a little less frequent. I mean, I was able to get some pretty big people on, and that was nice. So I made some acquaintances there that wouldn't have otherwise. But yeah, it's a fun thing. Even though there's a million of them, and there's a lot of content out there. There's still I find a dearth of really good content. So yeah,
Hmm.
it's fun stuff. And yeah, I was gonna ask you, oh, what's the name? What are the names of your school? Or are all your schools under the same name, essentially?
So, yeah, so the first 4 or 5 months of having a school, it literally just didn't have a name. It was me teaching jujitsu.
Yeah.
And at the time, me and one of my friends had a t-shirt company called the Head Nod Squad. And the idea was that, like, I think the joke started because we were Snapchatting each other in different jujitsu tournaments and nodding our head at different people. And then as it kept growing, we kept trying to see who like we could get the most famous person to do a head nod with us. It just became this joke. And eventually we decided that, as most young men do, we decided to start a t-shirt company. And we did that for a while. And so when I had my school, that was kind of like the peak of the head nod squad.
Mm.
And one of my buddies was training and he was like going to check in on Facebook and he goes, "Hey, what's the name of this school?" And I was like, it doesn't have a name. And he goes, "You should name it Head Nod HQ." And I was like, oh, that's a cool name. And we named it that. Head Nod Squad doesn't exist anymore, but all my schools are, we have Head Nod HQ, which is my main school, and then Head Nod Jerseyville and Head Nod Edwardsville. And so they're all under that same. It's one of those things that like the brand itself kind of took on a new name as we got more defined as a competition team and, just made more of a name for ourselves.
Yeah. And are you still doing, I know you have a couple of instructional videos online, but did you end up doing more instructionals available online on YouTube and whatnot?
I have a few that I've done. I have a few on BJJ Fanatics. I have quite a few more on my own site. I own a site called Simplifying Jiu-Jitsu,
Mhm.
and I have all of mine pretty much like on a monthly platform. And it's the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu Pro. And that is something that like with all of the stuff that we've done that like I need to get back to doing more of. I don't really most of the jujitsu knowledge that I share is through my podcast, which is built for audio. And
Mhm.
so it's not technical jujitsu advice. It is more of it is more of training methodology and mindsets and things like that. And so it's just something I haven't really gotten back to as much. Anytime I do a YouTube video and teach passing, teach some part of my jiu-jitsu, it usually does really well. But it's also one of those things is there's so much jiu-jitsu content out there now. And so for me, I've lately been looking at things that are different than what everyone else is doing. Even though I could probably do a good job of doing what everybody else is doing with the brand that I've built and probably do well with those things. It's just not been my focus now. I think eventually I'll go back to doing it.
Mhm.
Um, but yeah, I just that's a tough thing. It's a weird thing with being a jiu-jitsu coach and making an instructional is nothing that I feel like I do is a completed work. It is all still like this is how I do it now.
Yeah.
And that's probably just a mindset I need to get out of. They say like 90% today is better than 100% 10 years from now. And so but it is still just a mindset that I find myself
Yeah.
stuck in. It's like, man, this will be better when I know it deeper and when I understand it better.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, just it's kind of the mental wrestling that I have going on in my head all the time. It's
Sure.
like I could do these, but I don't know. I don't know if I want to right now.
Oh yeah. Well, you gotta have a sense of when it's, when it's cooked and ready, which can be difficult when you're in the pursuit of perfection. So I
Mhm.
know I struggle with that, like even in, with my company, it's like, oh, okay, should we like even when I first did it, it's like, well, there are a lot of things that I did not like about the first product, but at some point we just had to do it. But then there's also a lot of things where people push me, oh, we should get this done now. And it's like this is people are really asking for this. I'm like, yeah, but we're just not it's not there yet. There's some
Mhm.
stuff that just needs to get done, but the other things that, yeah, they may need time to be done properly before they get out. And if it's just not calling to you and you feel like it's not time, then maybe it's not time. But that's
Mhm.
cool. That'll be interesting to see. Do you do seminars at all?
I do. That's something I do more of. I really enjoy doing seminars because a lot of it too is like I feel like they make you a better teacher.
Mm-hmm.
Because like at my school, I will spend months teaching things to eventually come up with a sentence. And like that one sentence is like I really look at teaching very conceptually, teaching things that are really simple that can play in your head over and over when you're rolling to remind you on what you're doing right and what you're not doing right. And so, in teaching that way, um, it's crazy how much one or two words in a sentence really is important. And so, like when I go and teach a seminar, if it takes me a long time to get that one point across for people, usually that means that I'm missing something. And so that's my favorite part about doing seminars is you have people, they're asking all kinds of questions, and then you're like, oh man, all their questions are pretty focused on this one thing. I don't think I worded this right. And so yeah, that is like for me it is like I don't know, like a instructional is like when you make an album, and a seminar is like when you perform live, and you perform music live. And I just think that that's my favorite thing to do is to do it live and go in this room of 30, 40 people. I want them to all be better at passing the guard after the seminar and all understand when they're not passing the guard, why after the seminar. And I think that is like my favorite type of teaching is, when you're getting a lot of questions and you're able to kind of explain and, have those certain things that you're like, man, this really is refined and this really does make sense.
Yeah. That's great. I think that's definitely one of the avenues that I also want to go down to kind of help myself learn better and then pass on the few things I do know. I'm assistant coaching with my daughter's class, and so that's been fun, but I'm not doing much with that yet. But the other day in our positional sparring, people were keep asking about rubber guard. Now I am not the rubber guard expert, but I use it as a control position and I do like to get my omoplatas from there. And I put just about everybody in the gym has been had to deal with that and submitted by it. So they all wanted to know how it went. But it was fun to kind of that was the first time I'd really tried to teach anybody officially, like, okay, what do I know here? And to break it down and try and explain it to them. There's a million things, of course, I could have done better, but it, as people say, of course, yeah, when you teach, you really do learn quite a bit.
Hmm.
And also a bit about public speaking and everything else. So yeah,
Yeah.
it comes along with it. But that's excellent. And I'm gonna ask you, let's see, one more question before I gotta go because I gotta run off to an appointment. But I was curious, do you still compete?
I do. I really, as silly as it sounds, like I have taken kind of I've competed randomly, but I've taken it more of a break from competition because of the stuff that I've been working from Henry. I really was at the peak of my competition career. I was beating some really legitimate guys, and then I got to this point where I was like, I don't know if the jujitsu that I'm bringing is ever going to be good enough to beat this level of guy that I'm dealing with, this top level of guy. And when I learned from Henry, I was like, if I could get good at that, if I could perfect that, maybe that would be big enough and maybe that would be different enough. And so then for the last 2 years of mastering it, I would get reps with some really high level guys and it would work really well. But I really hadn't gotten to put it into competition practice until this year. So I did Indianapolis Open and just worked on weight distribution, had 3 matches in it. And, at Black Belt Adult was able to win those matches in a way that I had never won matches before. Just to where didn't feel like I'd used much energy at all. 2 of them I finished from the mount. When one was an Americana and the other was a head and arm choke, and those are both like not very common submissions to hit. I think it was just more of the principles being put into practice.
Hmm.
And so I'm 31 now. I'm gonna try to do a one last real run as a competitor, as an adult competitor,
Yeah.
and see what I can do with with the skills that I've acquired. And
Yeah.
so yeah, I've taken a long time off or a while off, and gonna get back to it, or just starting to get back to it now.
Did you always find yourself pretty comfortable with competition? It sounds like you started really early on, and I know myself. I found 2 things. I can either normally, if I care enough, I get super nervy, and then I tried the other method. I went into a couple matches and just said, "Don't give a fuck." And then you could tell in the role, like I was like, "Oh, I was lazy. I didn't let," and I
Mhm.
walked out of it not feeling stressed out, but I didn't learn anything because I wasn't really trying hard enough. So
Mhm.
I've struggled with that, and I get a little nervy just thinking about going to competition again.
So there is a reason that probably 30-ish% of my podcasts are focused on competition anxiety and competition performance. And that is because I struggled with it um, at every belt. And not that I didn't eventually perform well at these certain belts, but it was always hit or miss for me. And even like my coaches would have this kind of saying of, well, what Josh is going to show up today. And it was this thing I could never seem to get a grasp on. I was just never could seem to tweak it. And in early on at black belt, I got this had this rib injury, and it was really preventing me from being able to perform at my best. And so I also had a bunch of students that were all competing at some big tournaments, and I was like, man, if I'm going to be there, I still want to compete. And so I spent that time, probably 2 years, just going, I want to perfect the how should I warm up? What should I do? What should my mindset be? And I experimented with a million things in that time. And since then, I feel like I actually, after 14 years of competing in jiu-jitsu, I feel like I finally got to where I can, I know that I can show up and compete at my absolute best and perform at my absolute best. Still get nervous sometimes, still, don't other times. But I've been able to separate that from my ability to perform. And so, yeah, that is why I've focused on it so much on my podcast. Anytime I've had good competitors trying to break down their mindset, break down their warm up, break down every little bit of it. And now I really do feel like not only do I have a really good handle on it, but I've been able to help a lot of people that struggle with competition anxiety be able to perform at a really high level and do their best, perform as themselves in competition.
Nice. That's good stuff. Yeah, I keep thinking about it. We'll see. I've got a few nagging injuries, but when those fade away, and maybe when I can find a good competition where there's enough of us old guys that don't want to hurt each other too bad,
Uh-huh.
that will be helpful as well. So, but yeah, one of these days I know I've got to face that dragon, so I may start listening to those episodes. I've been mostly skipping around in your episodes. I'm like, I'm not worried about the competition thing at this moment, but you've had some really good content there in general, though. Really enjoy the show, and yeah, and it's been a pleasure to talk to y'all. I would love to talk to you again sometime. But where can people find you preferably? I mean, obviously you've got your podcast and
Yeah, my best place to find me is I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu. So on YouTube, that is my YouTube channel. My podcast is the I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show, and I have an Instagram. It's the Josh McKinney, but I really just share stuff that we share on our I Suck at Jiu-Jitsu show Instagram. And so that's the best place to find me and keep up with what I'm doing and to learn from me too.
cool. Sounds good. Oh, and just a little shout out for your dad, I guess. What's the name of his book again? And
His book is The Gospel of Fitness. He spent 35 years trying to perfect his ideology of fitness and weight loss, and really longevity is weightlifting to stay strong, to be able to pick up your grandkids, to be able to stay healthy and live a good life until it's the end for you. And you can get The Gospel of Fitness on Amazon, and it is, he's been doing a book tour basically for the last 4 or 5 months with it, and really has been killing it with that. And people have really been getting a lot of help. I have multiple people at my gym that have lost a bunch of weight because of the principles that he talks about. And it's also just he's a great communicator. It's just a really fun read.
yeah, good. Well, I'm glad he's doing well with that. I've enjoyed the episodes with him and you talking, and he seems like a really good guy. So obviously raised a good kid, and so thanks again though for being on, and thanks for letting us be a sponsor for your podcast too. I've been enjoying it very much, and your ads are fun, and yeah, so just
Absolutely.
happy to be a part of it all, and yeah, have a great day too.
You too, buddy.
Better to have a short life that is full of what you like doing than a long life spent in a miserable way.